So we're back discussing the precepts. You had a break? Break's over. But what I wanted to do was ask you to tell me how you relate to the precepts at this stage of your practice. Like what do the precepts mean to you? Maybe you've taken them, maybe you haven't, but what do you think of when you think of the precepts? Or how can you see a way to work with them in your life?
I'm more working on the three speech ones, so when you hear yourself saying some things, you're related, I shouldn't be swearing or need to, not copy something. So it's like all the time, especially the truth one. The first one covers everything.
So the first one,
And then non-violence covers everything.
ahimsa, which is important in yoga too, isn't it? So ahimsa is harmlessness. So ahimsa covers all of them, right? If you want just one precept to think about, it's to cause no harm. And that means to ourselves and others. So we usually put that at the very top, but that's when we talk about not to kill another living being. We kind of put harmlessness there, to do no harm to ourselves or to any other. And Sherry, so you're working on speech now. So the first 5 precepts, there's not telling a lie. And then what are the 3 that we add then in the 8 precepts? Who's working on their speech? Do you remember the 3? We add 3 more in the 8 precepts. That's the only thing we add. If you're moving from the 5 to the 8 lifetime, you're really only adding 3 more things to work with your speech.
Not to be harsh, use harsh speech, malicious speech, or idle chatter.
Okay, and did you have something too? That's right. Stealing is the second one. Yeah. And when we talk about not stealing, we're talking about not even taking people's ideas from them, or not taking something even if we think it might be okay, unless that person gives it to us, right? And speech, Todd, you got all 3 right. Yeah. So our speech, when, you can see how important speech is, how important it was to the Buddha and to the everything he's talking to us about our morality and ethics. Those 3 additional precepts are about speech. So we can have all kinds of things going on in our head, but what we want to start doing is being able to see something rising up. Are you catching yourself, Sherry, when you start to feel it rise up? Because like right now, what might you be thinking about the motorcycles outside? Yeah, they're loud. Why don't those people have mufflers on their bikes? And all those kind of things. It can stay in your head, but if we start saying it, if we start saying those things, it becomes like the harsh speech or the malicious speech. Could even be just idle chatter. You get into a debate about whether motorcycles should have mufflers or not. But it's that the discipline of not letting a lot of those things just come out without thinking about it, letting those things just kind of well up in us, and then just letting them go. Because once something comes out as speech, then we've got to deal with the repercussions of it. We've got to deal with maybe someone we hurt, or something we say that might not really be fair to say about someone that speech that hurts another person. So we start working with things as they arise. And our speech is probably the best example of that.
What do you do when you're in a group and your friends are gossiping? You don't agree with it. You say nothing because it's better to say nothing. You don't want to get in an argument.
Right.
And then that's a tough one to face all the time.
If you have, well, that's a good question. What do you do if you're with friends and they're gossiping and you don't agree even with what they're saying is right?
Leave.
You can leave, right? Or you can be silent. And sometimes that silence is pretty powerful too, because it's no fun.
Why are you talking?
Yeah, and then you
know that you're not agreeing. It's not.
and you can always say, I'm working on right speech. My project this year is to only use right speech. Just tell them that. They probably don't want to hear anymore, but then somebody might ask you later what that means.
I think it was Saturday. I was at the Metro train station, and two gentlemen from here were going out to Chicago, and had their robes on. And I thought it was kind of interesting because while I was talking to him, and another guy came up and he said, "You guys are speaking." And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, I thought you're not supposed to just idle, chatter and stuff. But it's kind of, kind of like, where's the line? Because, because also there's society and being social, so it's like, I don't know. But, they weren't exactly sure how to answer.
Were you one of those guys? Well, that idle chatter is the hardest one, right? So, but the monks, maybe people are watching monks more closely than they watch everyone else. So, I think we all engage in that. Sometimes we think of it as friendly conversation or waiting for a train conversation, right? But we can always be a little bit more aware of it. Like be aware if what we're saying is just to fill the space or to fill the silence. But mainly we want to be sure, even if we're talking about the weather, which is pretty much idle chatter, that we're not doing any harm. We're not talking. The main thing is that we're not talking about someone or saying things that could be harmful, or laughing at the expense of others. And then those things, I think, is where we start. Things that might be harmful, or that someone else watching it could think was, unnecessary. But I think we all enjoy being with friends and talking, right? And so there we have to find our own middle path. Because if we just give up all social conversation, it's probably very hard on us and also our friends and our family. So I think that's one of those things that we really have to look at, a middle path. So sometimes, you might be with people who are so invested in what they're saying that they're not listening to anybody. So a good rule of thumb is to work to become a good listener. And then that's going to cut out a lot of chatter, right? Of unnecessary chatter, because we're really trying to listen to the other person, even if they're talking about the weather. So that's a tough one, though. It's really hard. I know it's hard for me. So we're always trying to balance enough friendly conversation to not make a situation feel really awkward. But in your case, like if your friends are gossiping and it's harmful, then sometimes we have to decide to just leave or just say, well, I'm working on right speech, so this is not a conversation that I think is right speech. But I think the other good solution is when you're in just an okay but kind of blah conversation, just become a really good listener. And whoever you're listening to will like that. Speech is the hardest. That's why I mean, you can see how important speech was because it's the entire difference between the 5 precepts and the 8. The other ones are the same old precepts. We just keep working on those. But speech, we have to start somewhere and then get better with it. Does anybody else have things that they've seen with working with speech that's helpful? Yeah, I think that's the whole point too, right? That we try to have that, just the way when we're meditating, we're learning to just stay with our breath, kind of stay with that present moment. With our speech, it's really good to maybe breathe, take a few breaths before we say anything in a conversation. Like really give ourselves a second or two to think about it. Because then the Buddha said, he made it even more challenging. So in other talks he talked about, is it kind? Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it the right time? And is it the right place? So in addition to the other limitations on the kind of speech, there are all those things that make it be appropriate, when we even use speech. So silence and listening is always a better choice. But those are important things to work with. All of us, I know, can improve on our speech or our listening. So who's taken the Bodhisattva vows or the 10 perfections? Todd? Has anybody else? So, how do you work with the 10? Does everyone remember what the 10 perfections are?
I have to review them sometimes, but they're pretty straightforward and common sense. You have to remember you want to help other people to reach enlightenment. So, for myself, I try to help other people by teaching them. Body and I, how the course at MCC a week ago. And
what'd you teach?
Buddhism.
Was it part of the?
Buddhism. We got an hour and a half. So I had a PowerPoint that people enjoyed and talked about chanting, talked about. I guess you call it devotion, part of Buddhism, as opposed to the academic, which is what I talk about. So that's one thing.
So if you choose to take the 10 perfections, or we also call them the Bodhisattva vows. Now you have a Tibetan background, but in Theravada Buddhism, we don't talk a lot about becoming bodhisattvas. We don't really work with the bodhisattvas the way Tibetan Buddhists do. We do have a large statue of a bodhisattva outside our building, but we aren't. We're, what did the Mahayana call us? The selfish ones, right? Because in the Theravadan tradition, we always talk about starting with ourself. That we have to, take the oxygen mask first before we help anybody on the plane. So it's not that we don't want to help the other people on the plane, it's just that we really recognize we need to help ourselves first so we can help other people. But sometimes I when we call them the Bodhisattva vows, I prefer using the 10 perfections just because it seems more Theravadan. But those are the qualities that we can make, instead of having guidelines, the 10 perfections are the qualities. Now let me try to get it. Mary, you've got to correct me if I don't. Generosity, and our ethical behavior, morality, renunciation, energy, and wisdom. Those are the first 5. And then you do. If you're a little kid, then you go, that's 5. And then the next are patience, truthfulness, what's the next one? Determination. Loving kindness. And upekkha is equanimity. Is that 10? So those are the 10. Those are qualities that we can spend, several lifetimes working on. But they're the same qualities that we talk about all the time. Not in that order. That's why I can't remember. But we talk about those qualities all the time as in any kind of Buddhist discussion or any kind of talk. Those are constantly the qualities that we talk about working on in our lives. And so they're not new to us. They're all very practical ways to live our human lives. And they also are extending out loving kindness and compassion, all generosity, everything is being extended out to others as well. But the main thing we need to focus on is developing the quality within ourselves. And when we do that, it is the most natural thing in the world then to extend it out. We don't keep the quality of compassion just for ourselves. We feel it, we have compassion for ourselves, but then the natural outflowing is to extend it out to others. So they're really beautiful qualities, whether you do it, they're the qualities of a Buddha and the qualities of a Bodhisattva. So we know they're the qualities that someone has to have before they can even be a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. But they're also the most basic qualities that we all want to embody in our lives. So I think we're working on those all the time anyway. So nice to have them. Do you sometimes work with a particular quality, like specifically think about that quality to work on, or?
Not really, no. All of them are sort of, they all boil down to helping other people. So I try to focus on that. I like this is Zen, sort of Zen Japanese formula for the Bodhisattva powers, and that's sentient beings are numberless. I promise to save them all. The dharma is limitless. I take the vow to understand it all. Delusions are endless. I promise to end them all. And nirvana is unsurpassable goal. I promise to achieve it. I sort of think of that one. And I don't have to remember 10, only 4.
You don't have to what?
I don't have to remember 10, only 4.
Oh, only 4. That's all your good background in the Mahayana tradition. So those are the precepts. And when we talk about having a ceremony here for the precepts, someone can take the precepts every single day when you wake up in the morning. You can have the intention to do no harm, the intention to not engage in any kind of in taking something that doesn't belong to you, or in sexual misconduct, or being dishonest, or telling a lie, or you can have the intention not to become heedless. And that when we talk about the precept about not becoming heedless with alcohol and recreational drugs, we know now that there are a lot of things besides those two that make us heedless. So it can be gambling or shopping or eating or TV or we have so many things to become heedless with that it's kind of an open door. We can just think of your favorite way to kind of disconnect. You don't have to be drinking or taking drugs to just want to, walk away from it all for a while. And usually we do something else that causes us just to, I don't want to be mindful. I don't want to see or do, or, I want to kind of stop the world and get off for a little bit. All those are the things that we do that keep us from being mindful. It might just be because we've had a really bad day and we want to break from it. But we all have our little things that help us kind of intentionally walk away from mindfulness. And that's something we can just work with over time, because this entire practice is working with our minds to understand the way our mind works and to know how to work with it the best way, and how to always keep our awareness and our effort to keep that going. Our energy and our effort and our determination, those are the qualities also in the 10 perfections. Those are the qualities that we need just to stay on a spiritual path. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. So if we find that we're kind of wanting to be like, I need a break, I need to get away from all this stuff, life, we can start examining that too. Like, maybe I don't need to go shopping so often when I'm in a bad mood. Or maybe I can just sit and meditate on, why am I, my bad mood? What does it feel like to be in a bad mood? What does it feel like to want to just turn off to the world? And let that be the focus of our attention, and see that might be something that we're choosing to help us turn off. And we can just look at that when we sit, kind of look at it from all those different angles to see, okay, so I just ate a whole quart of ice cream. How does that feel? Right now, how does that feel? Now, I'm lactose intolerant, so I know exactly how I'd feel. It'd be like hell. But that's when we go to those hell worlds, right? When we do something to take our mind off of something else, we usually end up in a worse place, feeling really bad about whatever we did to distract ourselves from life. But we can use those things even as something to meditate with. We can look at that. What does it feel like to eat a quart of ice cream to numb myself? How does my body feel? How does it make me feel mentally? I'm just using ice cream as not my particular vice. So, eating too much chocolate, or it's the same thing as drinking too much, right? Because we're doing something to an excess to cause us to stop thinking for a while. And it's good to not think, but it's better to do it on the cushion and just do it as a meditation instead of figuring out some way to numb ourselves. It's that numbing ourselves that we want to try to avoid if we can. Instead, be awake to everything. Let everything be valuable to us. And we can do that in our meditation practice. So the precept ceremony is October the 12th. So whether you're taking precepts or not, it's a wonderful day to come to on that Saturday, because it's a lovely ceremony to watch, and it creates a nice feeling of community, I think. But you don't feel any pressure to take the precepts, but taking the precepts can give you some valuable guidelines just to help you continue on your path. It's not a requirement, but when we take the precepts, we also do take refuge. We take refuge in the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha. So to me, I think of those things as becoming, the Buddha is our teacher, and the Dhamma is truth, the truth that we see in nature, that we see in the world around us. And the Sangha is the community of other people that we luckily are really fortunate to have a good big community here. But we take refuge in those things when we take the precepts. And to me personally, it's like those become my anchor. So they keep me anchored in something, so I don't forget about it or wander away too far without thinking, wait, I have those things. If I'm having a difficult time, as my anchor, it always reminds me at some point, come back to those things, the teachings of the Buddha and the teachings themselves, the Buddha as an example, and the Sangha as people I can trust and part of my community. So taking those three as refuge is, for me, like taking an anchor. So when something does come up, my tendency is typically to forget. But if something's my anchor, I know to go back to that and look at it over and over again as probably the solution to whatever it is I'm trying to work with, whatever I'm trying to figure out. So we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and then we take the precepts not as rules or commandments, but as guidelines for our life. Just something to help us as a focus. Like if something's not going right, it's always something we can look at, or something we can just reflect on, or say every morning. The precepts can be your intention for every day. So it's a good practice to even read them every morning when you wake up, and read them as my intentions for today. And a good way to start your day off. So it was very important. The precepts have been around. There are precepts in yoga and all other spiritual paths, and many share the same ones. But these are not things that we talk about, okay, I can't take the precepts until I perfect all of these. We take the precepts so we can use them to work with from that day on in a more, we're acknowledging, okay, these are some guidelines that I think make a lot of sense. And so these are things I want to look at in my life, and then find how I want to address them. And we all do it in different ways. So, anybody else have a question before we close, or a thought, or a comment?
What did you mean by renunciation?
Renunciation is when it usually sounds like it's telling someone you have to become a monk, right? Or give up everything. Renunciation is really letting go of things that no longer serve us well. So it's a very natural process to let go of things that we don't really need. So it might be ideas, or it might be certain attitudes, or certain, like maybe letting go of anger that can be renunciation, or letting go of an attitude about something that doesn't serve us well. So as we see, it's not like letting go of our house or our car, or it's not that kind of renunciation. It's more just letting things kind of slip away naturally when they don't serve us anymore. Not hanging on to things, not clinging to things. It's a good question. Thank you for asking it. So anything else? So I'll try not to beat you too much over the head in the next couple of months about the precepts, but we will talk about them again. Okay. Thank you, everybody.